Tales from Childhood, written by Roald Dahl. Goodbye, Repton. There were about 30 or more masters at Repton, and most of them were amazingly dull and totally colorless and completely uninterested. But Corkers, an eccentric old bachelor, was neither dull nor colorless. Corkers was a charmer, a vast, ungainly man with drooping, bloodhound cheeks and filthy clothes. He wore creaseless flannel trousers and a brown tweed jacket with patches all over it and bits of dried food on the lapels. He was meant to teach us mathematics, but in truth, he taught us nothing at all, and that was the way he meant it to be. His lessons consisted of an endless series of distractions, all invented by him, so that the subject of mathematics would never have to be discussed. He would come lumbering into the classroom and sit down at his desk and glare at the class. We would wait expectantly, wondering what was coming next. Let us have a look at the crossword puzzle in today's times, he would say, fishing a crumpled newspaper out of his jacket pocket. That will be a lot more fun than fiddling around with figures. I hate figures. Figures are probably the dreariest things on this earth. Then why do you teach mathematics, sir? Somebody asked him. I don't know, he said, smiling slyly. I only pretend to teach it. Cockers would proceed to draw the framework of the crossword on the blackboard, and we would all spend the rest of the lesson trying to solve it while he read out the clues. We enjoyed that. The only time I can remember him vaguely touching upon mathematics was when he whisked a square of tissue paper out of his pocket and waved it around. Look at this, he said. This tissue paper is 1/100th of an inch thick. I fold it once, making it double. I fold it again, making it 4 thickness. Now, I will give a large bar of Cadbury's fruit and nut milk chocolate to any boy who can tell me to the nearest 12 inches how thick it will be if I fold it 50 times. We all stuck up our hands and started guessing. 24 inches, sir. 3 feet, sir. 5 yards, sir. 3 inches, sir. You're not very clever, are you? Corker said. The answer is the distance from the earth to the sun. That is how thick it would be. We were enthralled by this piece of intelligence and asked him to prove it on the blackboard, which he did. Another time, he brought a 2 foot long grass snake into class and insisted that every boy should handle it in order to cure us forever as he said, of a fear of snakes. This caused quite a commotion. I cannot remember all the other thousands of splendid things that old Corkers cooked up to keep his class happy, but there was one that I shall never forget, which was repeated at intervals of about 3 weeks throughout each term. He would be talking to us about this or that, when suddenly he would stop in mid sentence and a look of intense pain would cloud his ancient countenance. Then his head would come up and his great nose would begin to sniff the air, and he would cry aloud, "By God, this is too much. This is going too far. This is intolerable." We knew exactly what was coming next, but we always played along with him. "What is the matter, sir? What has happened? Are you all right, sir? Are you feeling ill?" Up went the great nose once again, and the head would move slowly from side to side, and the nose would sniff the air delicately as though searching for a leak of gas. "This is unbearable. But what is the matter, sir?" "Oh, no, no, no." At this point, he would rise majestically to his feet and call out at the top of his voice, "Use the door as fan. Open all windows." This was the signal for frantic activity, and everyone in the class would leap to his feet. It was a well rehearsed operation, and each of us knew exactly what he had to do. Four boys would man the door and begin swinging it back and forth at great speed. The rest would start clambering about on the gigantic windows, which occupied one whole wall of the room. Flinging the lower one opens, using a long pole with a hook on the end to open the top ones, and leaning out to gulp the fresh air in mock distress. While this was going on, Corker himself would march serenely out of the room, muttering, "It is the cabbages, it does it all. All they give you is disgusting cabbages." And that was the last we saw of Corkers for the day. During my last year at Repton, my mother said to me, "Would you like to go to Oxford or Cambridge when you leave school?" In those days, it was not difficult to get into either of these great universities so long as you could pay. "No, thank you," I said. "I want to go straight from school to work for a company that will send me to wonderful faraway places like Africa or China." You must remember that there was virtually no air travel in the early 1930s. Africa was 2 weeks away from England by boat, and it took you about 5 weeks to get to China. These were distant and magic lands, and nobody went to them just for a holiday. You went there to work. Nowadays, you can go anywhere in the world in a few hours, and nothing is fabulous anymore. But it was a very different matter in 1934. So, during my last term, I applied for a job only to those companies that would be sure to send me abroad. They were the Shell Company Easter Staff, Imperial Chemicals Easter Staff, and a Finnish lumber company whose name I have forgotten. I was accepted by Imperial Chemicals and by the Finnish Lumber Company, but for some reason I wanted most of all to get into the Shell Company. When the day came for me to go up to London for this interview, my housemaster told me it was ridiculous for me even to try. The eastern staff of Shell are the creme de la creme, he said. There will be at least 100 applicants and about 5 vacancies. Nobody has a hope unless he has been head of the school or head of the house. And you are not even a house prefect. My housemaster was right about the applicants. There were 107 boys waiting to be interviewed when I arrived at the head office of the Shell Company in London. And there were 7 places to be filled. Please don't ask me how I got one of those places. I don't know myself. But get it, I did. And when I told my housemaster the good news on my return to school, he did not congratulate me or shake me warmly by the hand. He turned away, muttering, all I can say is I am damned glad I don't own any shares in Shell Company. I did not care any longer what my housemaster thought. I was all set. I had a career. It was lovely. I was to leave school forever in July 1934 and join the Shell Company 2 months later in September when I would be exactly 18. I was to be an Eastern Staff trainee at a salary of £5 a week. That summer, for the first time in my life, I did not accompany the family to Norway. I somehow felt the need for a special kind of last fling before I became a businessman. So, while still at school during my last term, I signed up to spend August with something called the Public Schools Exploring Society. The leader of this outfit was a man who had gone with Captain Scott on his last expedition to the South Pole, and he was taking a party of senior school boys to explore the interior of Newfoundland during the summer holidays. It sounded like fun. Without the slightest regret, I said goodbye to Repton forever and rode back to Kent on my motorbike. This splendid machine was a 500cc Ariel which I had bought the year before for £18, and during my last term at Repton, I kept it secretly in a garage along the Willington Road about 2 miles away. On Sundays, I used to walk to the garage and disguise myself in helmet, goggles, old raincoat, and rubber waders and ride all over Derbyshire. It was fun to go roaring through Repton itself with nobody knowing who you were, swishing past the masters, walking in the street, and circulating around the dangerous, supercilious school voyagers out for their Sunday strolls. I tremble to think what would have happened to me had I been caught, but I was not caught. So, on the last day of term, I zoomed joyfully away and left school behind me forever and ever. I was not quite 18. I had only 2 days at home before I was off to Newfoundland with the public schools explorers. Our ship sailed from Liverpool at the beginning of August and took 6 days to reach St. John's. There were about 30 boys of my own age on the expedition, as well as 4 experienced adult teachers. But Newfoundland, as I soon found out, was not much of a country. For 3 weeks, we trudged all over that desolate land with enormous loads on our backs. We carried tents and ground sheets and sleeping bags and saucepans and food and access and everything else one needs in the interior of an unmapped, uninhabited, and inhospitable country. My own load, I know, weighed exactly 114 pounds, and someone else always had to help me hoist the rucksack onto my back in the mornings. We lived on pemmican and lentils, and the 12 of us who went separately on what was called the Long March from the north to the south of the island and back again suffered a good deal from lack of food. I can remember very clearly how we experimented with eating boiled lichen and reindeer moss to supplement our diet. But it was a genuine adventure, and I returned home hot and fit and ready for anything.